Hello there. We have been talking about different story structure, and in this video we are talking about 7 point plot structure or story structure, which is developed by Dan Wells. We have also talked about Black Snyder beat sheet, hero's journey, and Christopher Vogler's 12 stages of hero's journey. Then we talked about Dan Harmon's story circle, and in this we talked about hook, plot turn 1, pinch 1, midpoint, pinch 2, plot turn 2, resolution, and we talked about how we have to start our film, how we are going to end our film. So in this particular format, what you will be doing with the ending of your film is actually the started point of the film, which is called the resolution. And this is how, what you can see on your screen, that though resolution is the last point, but it becomes the first point in this story format, and the starting, which is called hook, becomes the second point in this story. So hook is the setup and resolution is the simply the beginning of the film or beginning of the structure also. Then you have a simple arc where you can see a normal growth. If the character is not very wise in the beginning of the film, by the end of the film he becomes really wise. So when a character goes from one extreme to other extreme, that is called a simple arc. You put a character that is going to end up powerful in the story as a weak or in a weak position at the beginning of the story. Harry Potter is an excellent example of growth, simple growth arc. In the end, he succeeds in vanquishing Lord Voldemort and living up to the role of as the chosen one. He has both fame and fortune as well. Whereas Harry in the beginning is basically a impoverished orphan who lives beneath the stairs. Now this is what is the simple character arc, from staircase, living in a cupboard under staircase, to becoming the chosen one. This is a simple arc. Now a character growth arc, a character's growth arc involves them going from a state of weakness to the strength, to the state of strength, and vice versa also. By the way, people love when they see a character who starts at this weakness point and reaching and accomplishing and becoming the chosen one. This is like, if you see a lot of films, many of the films are from this point of view, because taking from a strong point, your character is strong, opening from this point and making your character stronger. From writing point of view, it's a very challenging job, because your character is already strong. Now in what capacity you will make him stronger? Are you making him stronger in a physical capacity? Are you making him stronger in a moral capacity? Are you making him stronger in an intellectual in a psychological capacity? By the way, these three can be three sequence, what I have just said. Now this plot device for developing character is standard because it is effective. Everyone knows it, people love it. So it is a hit with both readers and watchers. So if you follow this formula in terms of writing a book, it will work. And if you follow this formula in terms of making film or directing film or writing film, this will definitely, because people love it. Now the overcourse of the trajectory, it also the converse of this trajectory is also possible. It is possible to have a character beginning of the story in a strong position, as I just said, and concluding your story in a weaker position also. Or there are two ways. Your character is strong, you make him more stronger. Obviously in terms of writing it is not that easy. And your character is strong and you make him weak in the end, is comparatively easy. This is what actually you do with your villains. They are very strong as they are introduced in the story. The bad guy close in Black Snyder, this particular stage I love in the Black Snyder. So when the antagonist is introduced for the first time, he's very strong, and by the end of the film he's very weak also. But think it in terms of antagonist. This will be far more difficult than writing from strong to stronger. nobody loves, people actually, I don't know how people will react that if your character is strong and you make him weak in the end, unless this can also work, unless there is a sequence to it, you know. So this is really, really important. Now, we have been talking about the simple arc. Now, what is the complex arc? Now, the complex says that to progress through a shift is to take a different path than one leading from weakness to strength. A character's strength can move from one type to another through a shifting arc. That I was talking about, powerful to more powerful. This is, and I also said that from writing point of view, writing a complex arc is difficult, because in other words, even a well developed character must expand their definition of strength. Now, Wells uses Batman from The Dark Knight as an example. The Dark Knight is the sequel of Batman Begins. Batman Begins was released in 2005, and Dark Knight was released in 2008. Which is hero goes from, in part 1, which was released in 2005, he's a weak character who goes for a training, come back, sees Gotham in a very disorganized way, and then he picks him up and becomes Batman for the Gotham. But how would you start the second point when he is already that, and now you have to have a interesting character, and if you remember, this has got Joker in it, one of the finest villains for Batman. So he's comparatively, as a character, is far more interesting, engaging, mad, maniac. And how in the shadow of such character you develop your protagonist is technically a very, very tough job. That's why watching this trilogy will give you an understanding that when from point 0 you make your character reach point 10, and from point 10 how difficult it is to make him reach point 20, and from there then how difficult it is to reach, starting, all the films, there are a lot of people who say that produces bank on the sequels. No, they do not. I mean, obviously characters are known, there is no problem in that, but it is not just banking on the known characters, it is always advancing, because people know the story. Okay, now how do you advance your story is actually a challenge. So you have a character to establish, he is weak, you make him strong by the end of the film. That is like fine, that is a good writing, but that is a simple arc. But taking from one strength to another strength, which is a complex arc technically, and I have just explained it. So maybe in part 1 you can work on a simple arc. People will be happy because they loved watching these sort of cinema. But when you challenge them that now you have established your character, now how you take it forward from point number 10 or 11 to 20, from writing, from every department point of view, it keeps on getting complex, difficult, and something which is easily rejected by the audience. Now the injustice that has taken hold of Gotham is stronger than Batman muscle, as he discovers in The Dark Knight. The Joker even makes fun of Batman, claiming that his might is wasted on him. You take a superhero in terms of strength, and in this particular film, strength has no role technically, because he can overpower the villain. So Bruce has come to the conclusion that Gotham needs a symbol of hope and not the fear of Batman. Now this, from resolution to the hook point, which is like, first is the end, the first point is the end of the series, and the second point is the beginning of the series. Now we are not following the chronological order. Now we are directly jumping from hook to the midpoint. Now midpoint is always moving beyond reaction into action. Now whatever setup, whatever pinch, whatever plot, we will talk about pinch and plot also, whatever, all these stages that your protagonist is going through has to convert into action. It is a lot of pampering, a setup is built for you. You have been given either a simple arc or a complex arc. All these things are fine. There is a catalyst, everything is fine. You move out of your setting, everything is fine. But whatever you have gathered so far in the journey, now midpoint is always performance of that gathering. That's why it is said reaction, beyond reaction and into action. So after you are prepared your story beginning and end, beginning and end, resolution and hook, you can go to the story's midpoint, knowing that the midpoint marks the moment when your character goes from reaction to action, which is crucial in terms of story. In other words, they decide to take action in an effort to end the tension between them. Now let's talk about plot turn 1, which is like inciting incident. After outlining the story's resolution, which is climax, hook and midpoint, you can go on to the story's two significant twists or plot turns. That's why it's called plot turn 1, plot turn 2. The inciting incident is step 1 in developing the plot. Now inciting incident, remember this word inciting incident. The first plot turn in the story is meant to get you from the hook to the mid of the story or the midpoint. Then goal here is to throw the character off their routine. The purpose of plot turn 1 is to throw character off their routine, introducing a jarring circumstances that the character must deal with. This is typically where the writer introduces the story's central conflict. So remember it in this way: when you are talking about plot turn 1, you are talking about the most important central conflict in your story. Now what happens? Disruptive or jarring events, which is again for plot turn 1, you meet new people, discover a secret, confronting a new idea, or simply a term that you already know, call to adventure. Now the inciting events is technically an external factor. So inciting incident has to be an external force, factor that motivates the protagonist to get and pursue a goal. Think of something that would drastically change your hero's routine. Now inciting events cause your character to develop a goal. Now this is something very interesting. Now what happens, like if I'm in my office and I got to know there is a meeting in next 10 minutes, what do? I put things in action, because I have to reach to a destination called meeting. So that's why this inciting incident is a plan of action. Now when we talk about plot turn 2, which is like grasping victory from the jaw of defeat, plot turn 2 occurs when the story midpoint, between the story's midpoint and the conclusion. So one is up and one is down. The protagonist will decide and set up to carry it now on. This is a bold move on part of the character, perhaps the most important choice that he or she has made within the story. At this point also, the protagonist should acquire at least one last piece of information necessary to find to end the fight. Last but not least, the hero's experience what Wells calls the power is in me. You look at any film, when you are talking about plot turn 2, when he is defeated, when he has lost everything, where things are not working, be that the love interest, be that the mentor, be that anyone, this may sound very classy, this may sound very cliche also, but it is all about, the power is in you. You see Iron Man, it's not about that arc reactor, it's the Iron Man. You see Bahubali, it's not about the kingdom, it's about that urge, that I want justice. So all these things, at the extreme example, or for that matter guide also, Barish kab hogi, that central question in that film. So it's in you. Once the character believes that he is a pious, he has repented enough for his sins. He is ready to give up his life also for that. Rain happens at the end of the story. So the power is in, this sounds really cliche in terms of anybody who is not in the business of writing, that the power is in you or the power is in me. But in terms of writing, it really works. It may sound cliche, but it works. It has been working for last, now at least 130 years. The power is in you. You pick up any film, you pick up Guide, you pick up Silsila, you pick up this Mughal-e-Azam, you pick up Do Biga Zameen, whatever you pick up, this element, the power is in you or the power is in me, it always works. Like, then let's talk about pinch 1. Pinch, like you can see on your screen, there is a lot written about pinch. But pinch 1 or pinch 2, any of these two pinches. Pinch, you understand pinch, this is pinch. So it is basically to put your character in stress, I can read this: the pinch occurs when the reader feels the character emotion or physical strain, or when the character is under pressure. These things look beautiful, but if you understand pinch in the simplest term, it's the pressure, central pressure, which is basically to start the journey, and the last pressure, because there is pinch point 1, then pinch 1 and pinch 2, and the last is like all is lost kind of a stage. So pinch 2 is always, the hero's plan fails, the hero's mentor dies, the heroes lose everything. So if you go through all these, explanation, it's simply, where you are putting pressure in the story on your character. There is a pressure to start, and there is a pressure for your character protagonist to end also. So that's why this specific, format is really, really interesting. It is not taking a very conventional approach. It is talking about resolution, which is basically the end of the story. Then it is talking about after end. In the beginning, they are talking about the end. So they say that when you decide your end, then you start your story, because then it will be easy for you to start the story, which is the hook. And from hook, they are not directly jumping to, second point. They are jumping directly to the midpoint, deciding that here is where, that whatever you have been teaching your protagonist, now this is the time to put that in action. Now look at the Bahubali. Bahubali also has got a wonderful midpoint, that whatever, he is lifting shivling, he is climbing, mountains, he is fighting armies, whatever he is doing, at the midpoint, he is properly introduced for the first time when the enchantment of Bahubali, with a lot of drums, with a lot of entourage happens, and there is a crescendo which is building, and this is how, at the midpoint, whatever you were doing, at the midpoint you put Bahubali in action and says, yes, here is where he has come. Now this is how you build, your midpoint, you leave your audience in a state of awe, and they, I still remember when I was like, as this crescendo was going on and Bahubali was being established, I remember people's reaction when they were moving out in interval. They were talking about this midpoint, which was so interesting, so fascinating, so refresh. And the same thing goes with the Three Idiots also, that मतलब मैं ये ashes बहा दूंगा, अरे ये तो rancho है ही नहीं, all in the entire first half you have been tracing rancho, and at the midpoint you realize that whatever the guy, if he is the rancho, then they have been tracing the wrong person. So that sort of a midpoint, gives you, so in terms of, think it in terms of writing, that at one point you have resolution, which is the end of the story, which is crazy even to think about. Then you have the second point is that you are talking about the beginning of the story, which is again crazy. And the third makes it more crazier, that you are talking about the midpoint. Then you plot turn 1, pinch point 1, plot turn 2, pinch point 2. They not exactly, I mean, please do not take my words literally, they act as a filler, because all these three, minarets that you have created, everything is in between these three minarets. That okay, from 1 to 2 let's put pinch 1 and plot turn 1, and from 2 to 3 minaret let's put plot turn 2 and pinch 2. Now this is how it is. It is like I can visualize this particular topic in this particular way. Now, other than, Dan Wells, not only talks about these 7 points, he talks about a lot of other points also. He talks about, he talks about he talks about characters. He specifically talks about round character, but there are different sort of characters. Then he talks about what is the importance of rich environment. Subplot that I was talking about, everybody talks about plot and subplots. You read a lot, you understand also, but when someone asks you to create a plot and a subplot, chances are that many of us are not able to see a clear difference between these two terms called plot and subplot. Then the fourth stage is called the ice monster prologue, and there is a fifth stage called try fail cycle. And though you are seeing it in this specific order, but for the sake of understanding, I will be putting subplot at the end of the thing, so that you can understand it better, effectively. And we will see one specific example, which will be like, if I ask you, sir, what is the plot of the story, you will say, sir, this is the plot of the story. And other than all these things, rest things which I'll show you that how it happens will become the subplot of the story. Okay, so this is how it has been going on. For the revision, let's see it one more time, that when we talk about Dan Wells 7-point story circle, we are basically talking about the conventional way is to see it in this specific order, which is called hook. In chronological order. We are not starting with resolution right now. For the sake of understanding, we are talking about the first step is called hook, the second step is called plot turn 1, the third stage is called pinch 1, the fourth stage is called midpoint, the fifth stage is called pinch 2, the sixth stage is called plot turn 2, and the last stage is called resolution. The interesting is that it starts with resolution, and then we go to hook, then we move to midpoint, then we talk about plot turn 1 and plot turn 2. Look at that, these we are taking it in the form of 1 and 2. So plot turn 1 we take, and then we talk about plot turn 2, and in the end we talk about pinch 1 and pinch 2. This is how this Dan Wells 7-point story structure works. We will be talking about a lot of other things in the next video, where we will be talking about characters. Though Dan Wells specifically talk about round characters, I'll be talking about what sort of different characters we have. Like one is a round character, as you can see. Then you have other characters like dynamic character, you have flat character, you have static characters. So the character, saying simply the word character will not suffice. We really have to understand different sort of things. So round characters, rich environment, subplot, the ice monster prologue, and try and fail cycle. This is beyond the 7 points. Now what is the need to go beyond these 7 points? Well, we will try to understand it as soon as possible, and thank you very much.